and this is part 10. And I just wanted to have a brief bit of review with regard to the Salathiel and Pedaiah problem. Now, as you remember, let's just go back. We learned that in the registered line, there are names there that are recorded by the registrar of Israel regarding the genealogies of certain people in the line of Christ. There are 4 names there, 3 of which are removed. Jehoram, which was the father of Ahaziah, the father then of Joash, and the father of Amaziah. These 3 men have their names removed because Jehoram started a 4-generation curse. Though his name was not removed, he set the precedent. He taught his sons and his sons their sons. And so therefore we have 3 of these names removed because of their wickedness. Now, that helps us to know that there is a blotting out of names from the book of life and from the genealogies of Christ. And even though these names are listed in the registered line, 3 of them are removed from the royal line. No longer will God record them in history as having part or privilege of that exalted line. Next, Jehoiakim is removed. Remember, he taxed the people and he gave all of the gold and the silver and the vessels of God's house to Pharaoh Necho. And so therefore, Jehoiakim's name is removed. But the interesting thing about it is that Jehoiakim gave birth to a son that is called Jehoiachin, Jeconiah, or Coniah. And we took some time to learn about the Coniah curse. The Coniah curse is significant because Coniah is in both the registered line and the royal line. And his curse says that no son of his will ever sit upon the throne of Israel. Now that's interesting because the royal line brings us down to Joseph, and there is a man in that line whose name is Zerubbabel, and he is said to be the son of Salathiel, who is the son of Jeconiah. But we find also that Zerubbabel's name is also in the natural line. And you remember that presents quite a problem. He's in the registered line as descending from Jeconiah. His name is in the natural line, and his name is in the royal line as coming from Jeconiah. How can we explain this? If somebody comes and says, hey, wait 1 second, Jeconiah's seed, his line was cursed. And yet he's in the registered line and the royal line, and Zerubbabel's mentioned there. You've got a problem. The Bible contradicts itself. How in the world can Jesus Christ truly sit upon the throne of David through Joseph or even the natural line because of Zerubbabel? Well, the fact of the matter is you have to do a little studying. And if you'll just simply put the pieces of the puzzle together, you will find that Zerubbabel actually came from, his grandfather was Neri. Now, that's different than Jeconiah. What happened? Well, we will learn today that there is something known as adopting children. Or you can also reject the adoption of the children, but you can adopt them and actually give them the blessing. Now, it is our opinion that that is exactly what happened in the case of Jeconiah. He realized, hey, my seed's cursed. But Neri died. And in the process, Salathiel, and you will remember in 1 Chronicles 3, it says, behind the name of Salathiel, that Salathiel was his son, or more literally, his adopted son. So Neri died of the natural line, and Jeconiah brought his son, Salathiel, over into his line. Genetically, no connection. But, as far as being of his seed. But at the same time, he could give the blessing to this person. And so therefore, Salathiel was brought into the line adoptively, the registered line and the royal line, into Jeconiah, but still he was not cursed. And that's the phenomenal thing. That's how God works. He can always, here is the law, but he can also get around those things legitimately so that Salathiel can be in the line of Jeconiah, in the registered line, and rightfully so in the royal line, and still not be cursed. Why? He's not the seed of Jeconiah. He's the adopted son of Jeconiah. Now, we also learned that a fellow by the name of Pedaiah is in the registered line, but he's not here in the royal line or here in the natural line. Reason? Salathiel died as well. And so therefore, Pedaiah took the son of Salathiel, Zerubbabel, and raised him. The lines converge, as it were, in Zerubbabel, so that he has a right to the throne through Jeconiah as an adopted son. He is in the line royally through Jeconiah, and of course the royal line ends in Joseph, so that Jesus Christ, the adopted son of Joseph, in this fashion, has an absolute legal right to sit on the royal throne without breaking the law or compromising the curse of Jeconiah. And that is the wisdom, the fantastic genius of God. But at the same time, then, the natural line tells us that Neri was the actual son of Salathiel. Pedaiah is not mentioned because he gave no birth. Salathiel is the actual one who gave birth to Zerubbabel. And so therefore, this line, the natural line, is not cursed. So both naturally and adoptively, Jesus Christ has a right to the throne. Now, the natural line, of course, is brought down to Mary. Everyone in the natural line, as far as their names are concerned, are kept intact because the genetics of Christ had to be traced back through Mary to Adam. And it's in Mary that he became an actual human being. And so this line, the natural line, is the most important of them all regarding his person. Now we're in Deuteronomy chapter 25. And for the remaining part of our time this morning on this subject, we're going to talk about shoes. Florsham, what are some others we talk about? You ladies know there are probably 1,000,001 brands of lady shoes. All we have to do is to go to the shoe carnival and we can figure that out. But we're going to talk about shoes in two specific ways. There's a lot that the Bible says about shoes. But there are two specific laws in the Scripture regarding a loosed shoe. You say, Pastor, it's very simple. Why doesn't somebody just go to the shoe doctor downtown in Evansville? I believe there's one out in Washington Square Mall, and just get them fixed. No, you can't do that in this case. You have to actually take your shoe off. And there are two laws, as we've seen in the plural here. One for the redeemed, or perhaps we should say the potentially redeemed. Because the law of the loose shoe has to do with being rejected for redemption and what you're supposed to do. And the one for the potential redeemer. And as I've got redeemed and redeem her there, please, you could put off to the side potential, because that's exactly what it is. In both cases, the shoe is removed if you are rejected or if you personally reject the opportunity. This over here, we could say, is for women. This over here is for men. Why? Because that's what these laws pertain to. only if you were a woman in this sense could you be redeemed or rejected. And only if you were a man could you be a redeemer or reject that particular obligation. So let's learn about it in Deuteronomy 25, verses 5 through 10. The laws of the loose shoe. Law number 1, for the potentially redeemed. If brethren dwell together. Now here's a good thing here, brethren dwelling together. Were all of the members of the 12 tribes of Israel brethren? Yes, they were. Now, in this sense, their great-great-grandfather was Abraham. Their grandfather was Isaac rather. Their dad was Jacob. And though he had 4 wives, giving birth to 12 sons, they were all brothers in that sense. And from then on, everybody in Israel is related. And the Jews were supposed to live on the land, and so it says here, if brethren dwell together. Well, the obvious is, if you're in the land, then you're dwelling together. There's an obligation to be had. But now it specifies about dwelling together because some of the Jews migrated. Some of the Jews left because of famine. And that's what Elimelech did with Naomi when he went out of the land of Israel because of food problems. But now, if brethren dwell together and one of them die and have no child, and the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Now, please remember that though it doesn't cover it here in this section, it is connected. There were other subsidiary laws, subsequent laws made with regard to this. If he had a child, just like Jeconiah and Neri. Neri had a child called Salathiel. And Jeconiah said, Neri's dead, I just bring him over and adopt him. That was a proper measure. It's not dealt with here necessarily, but it was considered a law in Israel. Okay? She was not allowed to marry outside of the family. That reminds me of some of the states around here. They intermarry in the family. Of course, at this time it was allowed. She has to go to her husband's brother. He shall go into her and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. Now, when we read the laws of Israel, they're so different than our laws today. I had a question with regard to some of these things after the service last Sunday night, and one of the ladies, who is a new believer, said, the Bible doesn't like women very much, does it? Well, that's not true. But she can see laws like this. It's, well, I have no option. But of course, the man didn't have an option either. Oh, he did. That's the problem. He has the loose shoe option. But she's going to get him here in a second. She had to marry this guy's brother. That was a law in Israel. And there's no interpersonal relationship here. Women were treated as property. They were bought, or in this case, they were redeemed. Now, not all of the women were that way. In essence, Abraham loved Sarah and Isaac loved Rachel. Isaac loved Rebekah. Jacob loved Rachel, and there were relationships built there in marriage. But for the most part, it was simply looked on as a business transaction. He went into her to perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. That's what it was called, the duty of a husband's brother. It shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead. In other words, he gets the law of primogeniture to apply to him. He gets the firstborn rights in that sense under his brother's name. That his name be not put out of Israel. This is a family matter. We're going to have a fireside chat. This is the way it's going to be. We're going to keep the family together. But now note, perhaps this man has watched this woman with his brother up until the time of his brother's death. And she nagged, and she complained, and she did this and that and the other. And tent to tent, he could always hear them fussing, fuming, and fighting next door. And, it was close quarters back in those days. And so therefore he said, now look, if I bring this woman into my house, what am I going to have? Of course, he may not have been a prize either. But if the man like not to take his brother's wife, then let his brother's wife go up to the gate of the elders and say, my husband's brother refuses. Uh-oh. Now here's where this comes in. She is to be redeemed by her husband's brother. Only the woman and her potential seed, or actual seed, could be redeemed. Now, he refuses to raise up unto his brother a name in Israel. He will not perform the duty of my husband's brother. The elders of the city shall call him and speak unto him, and if he stand to it and say, I like not to take her. Now, I'm glad that's all he had to say. There wasn't anything more involved than that. Now, honestly, the odds seem stacked in favor of the man, and indeed they were. Now, time and again, that happens because of the structure of authority. But now, God is a fair God. He will always provide justice. Now, then the brother's wife shall come to him in the presence of the elders. Now it's her turn. Okay, I was a good wife. I did my part. Maybe she did. But this guy just simply didn't want to carry out or fulfill his obligation and obey the law. He wanted to get out from under this thing. And we're going to assume here, it's not her fault. She comes in the presence of the elders and looses his shoe from off his foot. In effect, that is a pronouncement of bankruptcy or shame of impotence. That's what she's doing here. I liked what Rush Limbaugh said with regard to what the one man who's a presidential candidate of Russia said about our president. He wouldn't meet with him, and of course, maybe that's right because he's such a radical and so forth. But this man said he's powerless, how you say in America, and I was on the little clip there, film, your president is impotent. And Rush Limbaugh said, considering all of the affairs that he has possibly had, that's one thing our president is not, is impotent. But be that as it may, when she took the shoe off, she said, this guy's bankrupt. It's a shame. He can't do it. That's the point. He can't raise up seed. He's bankrupt physically. He's bankrupt materially. He can't provide for me. And therefore it's a shame. And that's what she was doing. She, instead of simply allowing him to shame her, it's her turn. And that's taking off the shoe meant you're bankrupt in these ways. Then she got to spit in his face and answer, so shall it be done to the man that will not build up his brother's house. This was an important thing, that of raising up seed to Israel. I will multiply you, says God to Abraham, in the Abrahamic covenant. I'll multiply you as the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore. And any brother who said, I'm not going to raise up seed, was in effect going against the Abrahamic covenant. Not keeping it in a family, making the woman go outside of the family potentially to get married. So, his name shall be called in Israel, the house of him that has his shoe loosed. Now you know who did it. The woman loosed the shoe. Okay? Now, let's go to Ruth. Now, in the first part of the book, Elimelech and Naomi went down with their two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and they had two wives of the Moabites, Orpah and Ruth. But Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion all died. Orpah said to Ruth, now they were down in the land of the Moabites. We're going to be in chapter 3 here quickly. And Orpah said to Ruth, look, and Naomi, not to Ruth rather, but to Naomi, Naomi said, why don't you go back to your own house and find husbands? And Orpah said, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The problem was both Orpah and Ruth understood that God blessed Israel. So Ruth came to Naomi and said, wait one second. I know through my husband and your teachings that the God of Israel is the true and living God. I'm going to stick with you, Naomi. Now, here's a fantastic thing. That's her mother-in-law. We always joke about a mother-in-law, but a spiritual, godly mother-in-law is not bad. That we use in the wedding ceremony, whether thou goest, I will go. Whether thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. That was not said by a husband to a wife or a wife to a husband, but to a widow to her mother-in-law. She understood, Ruth did, that Naomi's people and God were the ones to be blessed. I want to go with you. I want the blessing of God. Now, how was she going to get it? Through the law of the loose shoe. The second law. She came to Boaz. Verse number 2 of chapter 3. But now is not Boaz of our kindred. Now, here's the important thing. Naomi knows Boaz to be a good man. Boaz will take up his responsibility. Verse number 10. Ruth steals into the barn and sleeps at the feet of Boaz. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, Boaz says, there's somebody else here. And she stands up out of the straw and says, it's just me. Oh, who is that? It's Ruth. Oh, well, blessed be thou of the Lord, my daughter. You showed more kindness in the latter than at the beginning, inasmuch as you followed not young men, whether poor or rich. In other words, you had no ulterior motives to just simply to get married, but to get married in the family line, to have a kindred or a brother raise up seed to you. Ruth was doing it right. She had her act together. Now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee that you require, for all the city of my people doth know that thou art a virtuous woman. It's true. I am thy near kinsman, howbeit there was one nearer than I. You see, you just simply went down the line. And Boaz said, I've got to keep the law too. We've got to approach this guy and see what he's going to do. Okay? Verse 13, tarry this night, in the morning I'll see if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, the brother's duty. Let him do the kinsman's part. If he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord lives. Lie down until morning. Verse 1, chapter 4, very quickly. Boaz went up to the gate, sat him down there. Behold, the kinsman of whom Boaz spake came by. Ho, such a one, turn aside, sit down. He turned aside and sat down. Boaz took 10 men of the elders of the city. Now, this was for a transaction of property. 2 or 3 witnesses, but if you had 10, it meant that the thing was final and complete. 10 elders as witnesses of this transaction. He said, Naomi is come again out of the country of Moab. She sells a parcel of land that was our brother Elimelech's. I thought to advertise thee, saying, buy it before the inhabitants and before the elders of my people. In other words, here I am, perform the duty of a brother. Now, then said Boaz, or let's read verse 4. For there is none to redeem it besides thee, and I am after thee. And he said, I, Boaz speaking, will redeem it. Then said Boaz, what day thou buyest the field of the hand of Naomi, thou must buy it also, or rather the one fellow said, as long as there was just land involved, I will redeem it. Excuse me. You must buy it also of Ruth, the Moabitess, the wife of the one dead, to raise up the name of the dead upon his inheritance. Now this kinsman said, now remember, the woman is not involved here. She has a mediator, as it were. Boaz is a perfect type of the Lord Jesus Christ.
and Jesus Christ acting as a kinsman redeemer. He is the far kinsman in that Adam is our nearest one. But Adam is going to prove or have to admit his worthlessness and impotence to raise up seed. And so the nearest kinsman is going to have to forfeit that right. What does he do? It's the law of the loose shoe. The kinsman said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I mar mine own inheritance. Redeem thou my right to thyself, for I cannot redeem it. Adam has to say before God, I can't redeem my race. I have no power. I'm impotent. I cannot do it. I can't give life spiritually, eternally to my race. So, in effect, this man is a type of Adam, and Boaz, the kinsman redeemer, is a type of Christ. He, the next in line, says, I will redeem it. I will perform the duty of a brother's husband to you, Ruth. Now, what did he do? Verse 7. This was the manner in former time in Israel concerning redeeming and concerning changing, that is, the transfer of possessions. At first he said, Naomi has a parcel of land. I'll redeem it. But Naomi also has a daughter-in-law, and she goes with the land. Wait 1 second here. I can't redeem it. What does he do? In front of those 10 witnesses, which shows a perfect and complete, changeless transaction once it's done, to confirm all things, a man, meaning the nearer kinsman, plucked off his shoe. Testimony, I can't redeem it. I'm either bankrupt or impotent. It's a shame not to be able to do that. It's a shame to admit it, but here, instead of getting the woman involved, the man, in the privacy of this meeting, however private it was in the gates of Israel, he took off his shoe. This time the man did it, admitting his own either unwillingness or impossibility of his redeeming it. He plucked off his shoe and gave it to his neighbor. You remember, the woman plucked off the shoe, spit in his face, and kept it and said, hey, this guy's got a loose shoe. He's a shame to Israel. But in this case, he was able to at least save some face by handing the shoe over to the next in line who would redeem it. Adam, in effect, had to hand it over to Jesus Christ, and Boaz is a type of Christ, the next kinsman redeemer. Therefore the kinsman said unto Boaz, buy it for you. So he drew off his shoe. Boaz said to the elders and unto all the people, your witnesses this day, I have bought all that was Elimelech's, Kilion's, and Mahlon's of the hand of Naomi. Moreover, Ruth became the wife of Mahlon, I purchased to be my wife. Now, was that so bad? No, because verse 13, let's read on and we'll quit. We sort of ran out of time here fast. Boaz took Ruth, she was his wife, and when he went into her, the Lord gave her conception, and she bare a son. Naomi said, blessed be the Lord, which hath not left thee this day without a kinsman, that his name might be famous in Israel. Now, how famous was he? The son of Ruth and Boaz. Verse 17. And the women, her neighbors, gave it a name, saying, this is a son born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed, and he is the father of Jesse. And Jesse is the father of the greatest king of Israel next to Jesus Christ himself, David, of whose line and whose royal blessing Jesus Christ receives. So, the kinsman redeemer, Ruth having no opportunity, no chance, she was absolutely powerless to do anything about it. But the love of Boaz for this woman, he saw she was virtuous and undoubtedly beautiful, and she was worth redeeming. And therefore he did all he could, legally and lawfully, to have her redeemed. But he had to go through or by the law of the loose shoe.